After a truly disastrous 4 years of the Biden administration, followed by a disastrous and terrible re-election campaign by Joe Biden until July of 2024 in the 100-day campaign for Kamala Harris, the Democrats are stuck in the wilderness. They are stuck without a leader. For the first time in 4 nominating cycles, Democrats do not have a clear leader for the next presidential election. Now you may say, well, Kamala Harris is the leader. Right now she's leading in polls to be the next Democrat nominee. Well, yes, although that is true, I think you really need to take a step back and look at the situation here. Kamala Harris is leading roughly by 14 points over Pete Buttigieg in the race to the White House aggregator poll. She currently is not even breaking the 30% threshold in this aggregation of different polls. She was the sit-in vice president for 4 years. She was the most recent Democrat nominee for the presidency. She was the attorney general of the most populous state in America. She was a senator from the most populous state in America. If you were to take that resume, apply it to anyone else without the name Kamala Harris, you'd be an instant frontrunner in the 2028 election. But for some reason, Kamala Harris isn't. And it's very clear why, because she's so unpopular with the American people. Her policies have been rejected by the American people. Her years of pandering to left-wing policies and left-wing activists blew up in her face in the 2024 election. And now, Democrats are stuck finding who will lead the party forward. And there is one person who I believe has a very, very solid opportunity to lead the party forward. And his name is Andy Beshear. Andy Beshear currently is the governor of Kentucky. And at a recent interview, he said that he would, quote, consider running for president in 2028. And many Democrats see the Kentucky governor as a potential nominee in 2028 in what could be a really crowded Democrat primary. I do expect a lot of Democrats to jump in this race. A lot of Democrats. Right now, you have 5 roughly Democrats that have expressed public interest. And then probably another dozen or so, maybe a little more than a dozen here that we're looking at. Almost 2 dozen we're looking at here. That there's some serious speculation by the media and also slight interest that has been expressed by many different people. Kamala Harris, we know she's made the binary choice. She's either going to run for governor or run for president. Amy Klobuchar, I think that she will run again in 2020. Obviously I don't think she's going to win, but I think she will run. Ruben Gallego from Arizona, he's made some comments that it's definitely crossed his mind. Andy Beshear, the list goes on and on and on. Gavin Newsom, AOC, John Ossoff, J.B. Pritzker, Josh Shapiro, Raphael Warnock, Gretchen Whitmer. You have tons of big-name Democrats here that are seriously considering jumping in this race. But none of them, and maybe some of them, but none of them really have the resume like Andy Beshear does. None of them have the actual policy prescriptions that Andy Beshear has. Because let's be honest about a couple things here. It takes a certain type of human being to win as a Democrat in a state that voted for Donald Trump by 30 points. Let's just be honest about that. Yes, is he elected in off-cycle elections? Do I think that if the governor's race were lined up with either the midterm or the presidential election, do I think there could be a different result? Yes, I do. But still, Andy Beshear is winning in a state by 5 percentage points. In a state that Donald Trump won in 2024 by 30 points. He won in 2020 by 25. 2016, he won by 29. This is not some purplish state. This is a state that if you look at the House of Representatives, they have one Democrat who represents the state. Otherwise, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Republicans who represent the state. And two of these are seats that Democrats don't even run a candidate in. And in the other states, the Republicans are winning 63% of the vote, 74% of the vote, 73% of the vote. This is not some purplish state. This is not some state with Democrat lean-ins in it. This is a state that has 2 counties that voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. And they weren't even huge margins, like 16 points and 18 points in a state where you're seeing 50 points, 75 points, 61 points voting for Donald Trump. This is not a liberal state. But yet somehow, you have a white working class guy, Andy Beshear. Now, obviously, yes, does the last name Beshear hold a lot of recognition in the state? I believe it was his father, if we can find right here, let's see. I believe it was his father who was a governor of Kentucky, yes, from 2017 to 2015. He was lieutenant governor back in the 80s. He was the attorney general in Kentucky from the late 70s to the 80s, and then from the 80s to the mid 80s then. Obviously, a big name in the state. So we're saying Andy Beshear, he was elected back in, what would that be? 20, okay. So he was elected then in 2019. Beshear was. So you had a Beshear who was the Democrat who represented Kentucky, who won by 20 points here. 20 points in 2011. Go back to 2007. Beshear wins by almost 60 points here. Then you have a Republican governor who wins in, 2015. They flip the seat. Fast forward to 2019. Andy Beshear, his son, comes back, wins by literally third of a point? Like, not a massive victory. But he then takes this really third of a point victory and turns it into almost a 5-point victory in 2023. And Beshear is one of the few Democrats who I feel has a very, very good prescription for the Democrats going forward. Now, this article was back from, I believe, February. But Andy Beshear hits it right on the head. Democrats need to talk like real human beings if they want to win election. I thought this was the best way you could sum up where the Democrat Party is right now. And to get away from what he called sanitized language and messaging. We have to talk to people like real human beings. Some examples that he put in here were terms like substance use disorder instead of addiction, or justice-involved populations, or incarcerated people in prison. He said, quote, "It's hard to communicate when you're not using some normal language." Because he has been the most successful red state Democrat in America right now. We just have to be honest about where this is at right now. What other blue state Democrats? Okay, previously in 2019, you had John Bel Edwards, who actually, was a more moderate Democrat who governed in Louisiana. But look on the Senate side. Look recently. Where have we seen Democrats from either purple states or red states not do great? Okay, you had Bob Casey from Pennsylvania, ended almost his 2-decade run there. You had Sherrod Brown in Ohio. You had John Tester in Montana. Blue state Democrats who really were, I hate to say it, they were meeting their maker. Obviously, Doug Jones in Alabama, that was kind of a fluke because he ran against Roy Moore in that special election, yada, yada, yada. But go back to 2018. Look at this. And, that's 2016. Claire McCaskill, red state Democrat. Bye-bye. Josh Hawley came in. You go up to North Dakota. Heidi Heidenkamp. She lost by 10 points in this election here. Go down to Florida. You had Bob Nelson. Bill Nelson, who, he was a Democrat who represented a purple, but a state that was moving further and further to the right. Look at Indiana, Joe Donnelly. You had a lot of blue state Democrats that were ousted. Now, obviously, yes, are there still some blue state Democrats nationwide? Yes, there are. But they're a much, much smaller population than they were even a decade ago. And I think if Democrats want to win, and look, I lean to the right. I've said this in a lot of my videos. I try and put this up front of where my political leanings are. I am slightly to the right. I'm right, center right. I really like the way Ben Shapiro puts it. I'm I cheer as loudly as I can when Trump does something I like, and I cheer and I boo as loudly as I possibly can when Trump does something I don't like. I'm not here to be on a political side. I'm here like, this is common sense as this is not common sense. And I think you should just look at it in that through those lenses. Like, this is common sense and this is not. It is not common sense to allow a 14-year-old boy to walk into a doctor's office and somehow demand that they're either going to get chemically castrated or surgically castrated through a gender mutilation surgery or process. I think that is ridiculous. I think, if they become an adult, that's fine. You want to do whatever you want to your body. It's not my problem. As long as you're not hurting anyone else in the process, I think it's sick. I think it's disgusting. I think it's vile. I think we should do everything we can to prevent it from happening. But at the end of the day, when you're a legal adult, that's your choice. If you choose to castrate yourself, if you choose to do that, but also you look at pronouns. You can't demand that someone else use the proper pronouns. If you look like a dude, if you look like a chick and I use the wrong pronouns, you can't demand that maybe out of courtesy, I might use those pronouns, but you're not going to demand, you're not going to regulate that I use the pronouns to your choice. When you're so insecure in your own body, how do you even know what you want? You're so insecure in your body, you want to become a different gender. Like, we just have to be honest about all of this stuff here. In the sanitized language, it is turning our world into a bunch of, in young people, into a bunch of snowflakes. And that's why you've seen a huge revolt from young men from the Democrat Party because of all of this sanitized language. If you don't know, and I'm a younger guy, young men do not use sanitized language like that. They don't. They don't use watered down language. They say things that it's locker room talk. Look, I played hockey growing up. I know how it was. Good luck connecting with guys using this sanitized language. And now the Democrats are trying to, they got this lady. I'm going to try and pull it up here real quick. Here, I got it right here. And now you have this lady, this Olivia Juliana, who is basically this person who Democrats have put in charge of recruiting young men back to the party. This just shows how out of touch Democrats are with reality. Just taking a listen to this lady for just a little bit.
I'm the person that's in charge of bringing young men back to the Democratic Party, according to Donald Trump Jr., Trump War Room, Libs of TikTok. And while none of that's actually true, every single time I saw one of y'all posting about me, I had one main thought at the top of my head. Y'all are a bunch of... Y'all are the ones that made it about a woman and her identity and the way that she looks. Something that y'all consistently claim the Democrats do. You don't actually give a fuck about young men. Instead, a lot of you want to talk about my weight. You're using pictures of me from about 65 pounds ago. So let me ask you this. If I lose another 65 pounds, will y'all actually raise young men's wages? Will you actually increase funding to mental health services? Or are you just going to find another way to deflect from the fact that
good luck to the Democrats. I don't actually wish them well, but good luck. If this how do you think this election map's going to look when that lady's put in charge of recruiting young men? When we saw that young men broke for Donald Trump by huge margins. It was almost insane how much young men broke for Donald Trump. And, you can look at the data. The data is very, very clear how young men broke for the Democrat Party, or broke against the Democrat Party. And Andy Beshear, he seems to have, as far as someone who is center-right, someone who has very, very good ideas as far as how the Democrat Party can regroup, can realign themselves, how they can actually win in 2028. Because that's the big thing from the Democrats right now. They need to win. They've now been, when was the last time you had a serious Democrat win? It was 2008 and 2012. Yes, did Biden win in 2020? Absolutely. But it was a weird time. Let's all be honest. It was a weird time. And he didn't even win by that much in the swing states. The difference between Biden and Trump winning, yes, was the popular vote. There was a pretty big discrepancy. But look at this. Georgia broke for Biden by what? 10,000 votes? 11,000 votes the state voted for him by. You look at Arizona. It broke for Biden by, I believe, like 10 or 11,000 votes too. Okay, so we're talking the difference between, what is that, 27 electoral votes right there between two states. You look at Wisconsin, broke for Biden by half a percentage point. So you're not talking about a ton of votes in the actual swing states that would have made the actual electoral difference here. But the last time the Democrats had a serious candidate that won, that was like a change candidate that was not Biden, was just this candidate that promised to not be Trump. But then it turned out that actually wasn't enough to govern and be a popular Democrat, was to just not be Donald Trump. Because he didn't just bring Democrats or the world back to what they considered the status quo. He went crazy with it, enacting some of the most radical DEI and equity policies in the federal government, tying large infrastructure projects, large government projects, large government funds to DEI initiatives, to equity initiatives, which is totally berserk. Totally berserk. The fact that that happened. Oh, so what? We now want to see equality between men and women in infrastructure jobs? Yeah, when most, like 95% of infrastructure jobs are held by men. And now you're going to put a equity proposition in place where you have to have at least 10% of women enrolled in your workforce in order to receive certain federal grants. Now, I don't care if you're a woman or a man. If you get the job done, that's what matters. I don't care. But don't start forcing this on other people. That's what's wrong with the Democrat Party here. That is what is wrong with them. And I think Andy Beshear, he is the answer moving forward. Obviously, time will tell. But that is going to wrap things up for today, folks. Let me know down below. Do you think Andy Beshear and his ideas are the ideas that can bring the Democrat Party back to sanity? I have a hard time ever seeing them getting fully back to sanity, but really getting them back to a place where they can win a presidential election like that. Let me know down below. And as always, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.